Hi everyone. So we have a thing that you never like to see in your car, which is the battery indicator staying on after you have already started the car. So I've tested it out with a multimeter and it looks like it's a problem with the alternator, and checked out a few videos on YouTube, and there's a couple different approaches to getting the alternator out of this car. It's a 2009 Kia Sportage 4-cylinder, and so I'm going to try to actually drive it up on ramps and get it out from the bottom. So stay tuned and we'll give it a shot. Alright, so we've got it ready to go up on the ramps. These are Rhino ramps, and these are really great for oil changes, and nice on this Kia because it gets you up off the ground and you can kind of take a look and see what's going on under there. So I'm just going to drive it up on ramps and then we'll be right back. Alright, so we've got the car up on ramps now, and you can see what the challenge is the alternator is actually underneath the power steering pump here. It's down there closer to the bottom. There it is right there. And so one method of getting this out is to actually remove the power steering pump and set it over in this area here. But I'm going to take a look and see if I can get it out from the bottom a little bit easier. One other just safety thing when you're working with these ramps, make sure you put some wheel chocks behind the rear wheels just so the car doesn't roll backwards and have nothing to stop it. Since we're working on the alternator, which is an electrical component, we want to disconnect the battery terminal first. So on this car it's a 10 millimeter. Make sure you go the right direction. And then you just want to lift that up and kind of tuck it back behind somewhere where it's not gonna flip out and hit that terminal. Just tuck it kind of nice in there. Okay, so the terminal is disconnected, and now we need to see if we can get on underneath there and get that alternator out. Alright, the next thing you'll want to do is kind of prep the area underneath the car, and I like to put a comforter down kind of in front just to make it a little easier when you're laying on your back, and then some just old Amazon boxes underneath. The first thing we're going to need to do, I also use this little kneeling guard, which is good, helps protect your knees, especially as you're getting older. But first thing we're going to need to do is remove this splash guard, and you can see as we get up underneath it, got these little 12 millimeter bolts. There's one there, one there, one here, which looks like that one may have actually popped out. All right, so we're going to remove these screws. These are 12 millimeter. I think I may have mentioned that. just leave that in there for now. Got 2 out. Let's get this bad boy. There's 3. There's 4. And now we've just got this little clip here to get out. So, a screwdriver. And these clips are kind of a pain. They actually break pretty easily. So, you might want to get yourself a bag of them, and sometimes you just have to kind of rip them out because they don't unscrew as they should. There we go. So, splash guard is out, and we'll take a look and see what else we got to do. So by the way, this is that little clip thing that's kind of a pain, and you can see what it looks like, right? So you've got this little screw, and then when you unscrew it, it's supposed to loosen the tension on this thing and make it so you can just pull it out once it's unscrewed, but it does not always work as you would hope. So just be aware. All right, so now that we've got the splash guard off, we can see the alternator a little bit better. What I showed you before was not actually the alternator, thank goodness, because that was be harder to get out. I think that was the AC compressor, I believe, but this is the alternator. And there's the little rubber boot that we'll have to pop off and unscrew. And I believe there's a couple of screws, one at the top, one at the bottom, maybe. So we have to see if we can get in there. Looks like there's one screw there, and then I believe there's one we'll have to access from the top. Now, the opening is actually pretty decent size, but I know from watching some other videos that this thing can be really kind of tricky to get out. So we're just gonna have to see if we have enough room between this exhaust here and the alternator once it's unbolted to get it out. If we have to, we could take the oil filter off, but that's not a big deal. I may just change the oil anyway if it comes to that, because I'm pretty close to needing to do that anyway on this car. But let's start at the top, see if we can get the belt tensioner loosened a little bit and get the belt off. And if you can see, it's kind of tricky to see over here, but there's actually a belt. Not sure if I can be able to, might be easier to show you from the top, but there's a belt kind of going on the side. Let's see, there you go. See the belt? And that's going to need to come off the alternator pulley before we can get it out. So let's go up top and see what we can do there. And then we'll come back down and undo the bolt on the bottom and disconnect the rubber boot. All right, so here's the alternator from the top. And I believe there's a tensioner screw. Let's see, I'm zooming in the right spot there. Right there. You see that bolt kind of sticking downwards? I think that's the one that we're going to need to see if I can see where we are here. So up. Yeah. So I think maybe that is what we loosen to loosen the belt. Or let's go ahead and give it a shot and see what happens. So I did stick a socket down there and saw that it's a 12 millimeter. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of hard to get a angle on the bolt, but I'm gonna try to loosen it up. Okay, so pretty loose. Wonder if that's the problem right there. Tighten it up. Just see how loose this bolt actually is. It doesn't feel super loose. That's the bottom one, okay. Kind of hard to... Feels a little loose, but not too bad. So let me just tighten that up and just see what happens when I do that. I mean, it's literally loose enough where I can tighten it by my fingers. So that's not good. Okay, here we go. Definitely need to get a tripod or something because I know this video is difficult to get some clearance. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a 12 millimeter wrench and try it that way. So let me grab that and I'll be right back. Alright, so I started it up, had to reconnect the negative battery terminal just for a moment to get it started, and I'm just going to put a voltmeter on here. The battery light was still on in the car, but it could be just because the battery was low because the alternator has not been recharging, so I'm just going to test with the multimeter here. The red on the positive. Black on the negative. You can see we're definitely low. I don't think we got lucky enough where it's just a loose belt. So we'll keep going. It does look like the belt's turning, and the alternator should at least be producing something. Right now, it looks like it's not. Okay, so this has been running a while, and we're still not getting anything higher than 12 volts. So I'm thinking, even with the belt tightened, you probably still got an alternator issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the repair at this point, and if nothing else, I'll get the old one out, take it in, and get it tested at the rebuild shop and see what they think. So you can see actually with the car off, the battery voltage is going up, which is definitely strange to me. It seems like the alternator should be providing more voltage when the car is running. So I continue to think there's something wrong with the alternator, and I'm gonna remove the negative terminal again and loosen that belt bolt, and I get back to work. Alright, so with my handy dandy ratcheting wrench, I was able to undo the bolt down there, and it actually flips up. So you can see it there, and if I kind of press my finger down on the on the bolt. Not sure if you can see that, but it flips. All right, so that worked just great. I was able to basically push this thing forward and then just slip my hand right around the side here and unhook the belt. But it's still pretty solid in here. Oh, there we go. Something just loosened just as I was shaking it. I'm thinking that, just based on what I've read, I don't think that bolt needs to come out all the way. I think if I can just kind of shake it loose out of there, I feel like it's in a channel along there and it will just kind of lift straight out. So what I might do is just go give it a look up top. Make sure I'm not missing another bolt. I might still have a bolt up top I've forgotten to get. And then I might just try getting a pry bar in that little gap, give it a little push, a little help, and see if that helps it get all the way out. All right, so I think I know what the problem is, why it's not coming out. I think this, remember the bolt that we loosened and kind of flipped up? That sort of tensioner bolt down there? It's hard to see. You can see that tensioner bolt. Right there. I think that needs to come all the way off. And so I think I need that 12 millimeter on the side there. I think I need to go ahead and finish taking that off. And then hopefully with that thing out of there, we'll be able to get it out from the bottom. So let's give that a try now. I'm gonna use True Blue. True Blue. You're my boy, Blue. Go in again. Try to avoid burning the crap out of myself. Now, where did my bolt go? I was just able to see it a minute ago. Kind of tricky to see with this thing. Wish I could get that thing out of the way. To it now, maybe a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm not going to film this part, it's just too hard to do with one hand, but just know that I'm taking out that extra bolt on the side, which I think you can see down there, kind of above the tensioner. Where is it? I'll show it to you when I get it out. I'm not sure if that was a good picture. I don't think it was, but I'll show it to you when I get it out. All right, so I finished loosening that and immediately the alternator dropped down. So that's, I think, a very good sign. And we're just gonna pick this thing out so you can see what it looks like. So this is the tensioner bolt, this longer part, I think. Couldn't really feel the belt getting tighter, but it was pretty loose originally. And then this part is what screws into the alternator. And that's the one that was still holding it in. So as soon as I unscrewed that with super glue here, we were good to go. So now let's go back underneath. And I think I'll put this somewhere where we don't lose it. Put that there. And then down here, kind of move. Yeah, it's just kind of still feels like it's kind of heavy down there though. I might need a pry bar to, some of the people when they were working on this with the coming in from the top, Used a pry bar to get it. The other thing I could do is I could take off the radiator fan. I mean, I guess there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I'm just kind of curious to see if it will go out through the bottom without having to do anything too major. Ow, it's hot. So let me get a pry bar and then go in through the bottom and see if we can kind of nudge it out of that J channel. All right, so I've got, it's risky, I'm going with green. I've got this little green pry bar, like 12 inches, 14 inches, something like that. And I'm gonna see, there's the bottom of the alternator, the oil filter. And then what I think is happening is it's getting kind of stuck in that J channel. So, see if I can just give it kind of a pry or nudge. What I don't want to have happen is it fall on my head, which I don't think would be good for anybody. I almost want to just take that oil filter off. Maybe I will, just to give me a little more room. I always do my own oil changes and I hand tighten them, but over time they get kind of tight again. So I think I might need to get that off anyway to fit it through the bottom. So let me get my filter wrench and then I will unscrew that, and then maybe it'll, actually, you know what, I don't know if that's gonna even give me any more room, so let me just try at the top here. And there is another side to this, but I don't even know. I don't think the other side of that comes out. Of course, this is still hot, so every time I do that, it's like burning my arm. All right, so let me try to just shake it a little bit from the top again and see, maybe I'll use the crowbar from the top and see if that helps. All right, success. So after a few more arm burns and just wrapping my hands around the sides and kind of shaking it, I was able to basically shake it out of that little channel and turn it. So now the big question is, it's completely detached now. I think it's obvious we're not going to get it out through the top unless we do like some of the other videos and move this power steering pump over to the side, or alternatively maybe take the top radiator hose off and the fan shroud, which is not too hard to do, but just out of curiosity, I'm going to see if we can actually come in from the bottom and get it off without doing the oil filter first, and then if we need to, we can take that off. So let's come underneath. You can see right now it's sitting on the oil filter, which is probably not a great thing long term, but I'm going to be changing that anyway. I'm going to do an oil change after I change out the alternator. So I'm just going to kind of lift it here, pull down here. Look at that. Beautiful. Did not have to remove anything, even the oil filter. So I don't know if that's easier than coming in from the top or not, but at least it worked. And now I can get this magnificent beast over to the alternator rebuild shop and have it tested and make sure that is indeed the problem. And if so, get a new one and we'll put it back in. So thank you for watching. This first part of the video has been sponsored by Harbor Freight's blue Pittsburgh Pro ratchet wrench. Not really, but maybe one day. So I'll take this to the shop and come back in part 2 and see if we can get it back in just as easy. Well, one last thing before part 2. I wanted to show that bolt, right? So here's the long bolt. And you can see it has like this weird giant square head thing, which I guess would be a clue that you don't really need to take it out. But then that part just kind of sits in that channel, and that's what I had to shake back and forth to get it loose. And then this is just where that nut was on the other side. And so that's the bottom of the alternator facing down into that channel. And so that was one bolt that we had to take off, or just a nut rather. And then this is the rubber boot. We screwed off that nut and the 2 washers. This is the 3-pin electrical connection. And then up top here is the other part where we had the tensioner nut, which was kind of that weird looking. I'll show you what it looks like. This thing, right? So this was screwed in up top here. I think like that. And then supposedly, I guess, when you raise and lower this, it raises and lowers the alternator a tiny little bit, so you can get more precision kind of adjustments on the tension for the belt. But anyway, that's the alternator out. It looks a lot bigger once you get it out than it did when you're looking at it from the top of the car. And I guess it's been about 45 minutes maybe a little bit longer than that. So here's the bracket where it kind of sits, that tensioner screw. Didn't have to take the oil filter off, but like I said, I'm going to do an oil change after this anyway, so if it got a little damaged having that alternator sit on it, it's not a big deal. But I think the takeaway is that there is enough room on the bottom to get this thing out without having to detach the frame or pop out the CV joint or anything like that. So I do think it's probably a little bit easier than going from the top, but I don't know. Whatever. If you don't have ramps, you can definitely get it out from the top easier, I think, because jacking up and removing the wheel and stuff can be a hassle. Now we'll see getting the belt back on and everything how hard that part is, but hopefully it's not much worse than removing it was, as long as you have one of these babies. All right, see you on the other side.